Parker's away today. We got 3 wash plants running. And we're gonna lift this pump out. We're gonna put the old one back in place. We're gonna fly it in. We gotta line up the discharge, get that hooked up, and then we gotta get the suction on it.
I just signed the deal today.
Parker bought a $500,000 pump and it almost exploded and hurt a man. While Parker was gone, Mitch ran the mine like it was his. The wash plants kept breaking, the new pumps were rusty, and Mitch had to fix them with old parts just to keep gold moving. He took a huge risk to fix the pump, even though it could have made things worse. Tune in, because after Jason hit the ground bleeding, Mitch told Parker he's not in charge anymore. Mitch holds the mine together. Mitch Blaschke has 3 wash plants churning nonstop, and every single one needs constant babysitting. Not the gentle kind, this is full-blown, mud-covered, diesel-scented triage. If even one of these mechanical beasts hiccups so much as hiccups, the whole day goes sideways. He's got no time to breathe. He's knee-deep in gears, grime, and grumbling crew members. But one machine's untouched, and when it breaks, everything stops. One of the main problems? The water pumps. These aren't your backyard sprinkler systems. These are $500,000 beasts, and right now, one of them is acting like a rusty bucket with the delusions of grandeur. Parker shelled out over $500,000 on 3 massive water pumps, and what did they get in return? Fuel tanks that were emptier than a politician's promises. Not a drop inside, dry as a bone and crustier than a forgotten can of beans. And it gets better.
See how disastrous that turns out. It's been a long time since we've done something stupid, so we might as well try that.
These fancy new pumps had been sitting so long without fuel that they rusted from the inside, like caked with it. No one bothered to test them in a pond, just tossed them into the mix like shiny toys in a sandbox. Now he has a giant shiny mess on his hands. With the old pump craned back into place, he and his mechanic Jordan hustle to hook it all up again. They're lining up pipes, reconnecting hoses, and hoping this tired chunk of metal has one more season left in it. Because when the water stops flowing, the gold stops rolling. And when the gold stops rolling, he ends up in Parker's line of fire. Out on the site, the sounds of grinding metal and shouting mechanics are the soundtrack of the day. The loader's jammed, the shaker's whining. The conveyor belt is making that noise again, the one that means it's about to tear itself apart. He bounces between breakdowns, half mechanic, half magician, pulling fixes out of thin air. By noon, he has already patched a leaking hose, swapped a busted fuse, and gotten cussed out twice by a loader operator who thinks yelling makes the machine work faster. He doesn't even blink, just wipes his hands, grabs another wrench, and keeps going. There's no time for feelings when the gold count's on the line. Lunch is a granola bar eaten with greasy fingers while hanging off a pump.
We've got the shaker deck, the conveyors. Let's do this.
Hydration is a lukewarm bottle of water pulled from a glove box. Rest breaks are for people who don't have 3 wash plants screaming for attention. He doesn't get that luxury. As the afternoon drags on, the sun turns the whole site into a frying pan. Dust sticks to sweat, sweat drips into eyes, and everything smells like exhaust and ambition. The backup pump is humming now, doing the job the shiny new one couldn't. It's not glamorous, but it works, and that's the Mitch way. Even with half the crew scrambling to put out fires and the other half elbow deep in repairs, he somehow manages to keep things from falling apart completely. It's not magic, it's experience, grit, and a little bit of desperation. The gold has to keep flowing. There's no backup plan for failure. By sunset, the machines are still groaning, but they're working. Barely. He looks like he wrestled a grizzly and lost, but he's grinning. Because even if the whole day felt like disaster stacked on disaster, the wash plants are spinning, the water's flowing, and there's dirt moving through the sluices. He knows the moment he leaves, something else will break. That's just how this life works. But for now, he's earned a few hours of sleep before the chaos starts all over again. He doesn't complain, he just wipes the grime off his hands, nods to the crew, and disappears into the dusk like a blue-collar legend. They're grabbing an adapter now, 12-inch down to 10-inch, because obviously nothing in this world can be easy or match up right. It's like forcing a beach ball through a basketball hoop and hoping nobody notices. But him, he just shrugs and keeps going. Because when a pump worth more than your house needs apart, you make it fit. The pumps act up again, and he takes a big risk to fix it. Risky fix saved the day. Once they get the pieces clicked in, it's time to bolt everything down tight and hope the suction line behaves. And this isn't some simple backyard hose, this is serious business. Water needs to stay in that line, but lately it's been leaking out like secrets in a small town. The foot valve, supposed to hold it in place. Instead, it's been acting like a drunk at a bar, letting everything spill everywhere. And let's not forget the impeller, the part that makes the magic happen. When it's spinning right, water shoots uphill like it's got somewhere to be. But when air gets trapped in the line, game over. Everything stops. That air bubble is basically a couch potato blocking the flow. Now Mitch has to do the one thing everyone says you should never ever do. He's about to deadhead the pump. Basically, run it full blast without a proper exit for the water. It's like holding in a sneeze until your brain shakes. Dangerous? For sure. But he's betting on pulling a strong enough vacuum to yank that stubborn air bubble right out of the line. If it doesn't work, they're toast. Too much pressure and the whole pipe might burst, turning their gold operation into a wet, muddy disaster. But he's already gunning it, and you can see the hose starting to cave in. That means the vacuum's working.
We're gonna have a lot of eyes on it here. We're gonna put the water to it. Hopefully that goes well. If it does, then we're gonna start adding dirt and see how it responds.
It's like watching someone try to suck a milkshake through a straw that's too long. Then boom, water flowing, pumps humming. Everyone's high-fiving, but the bypass valve nearly exploded. That water came out with enough force to knock someone over. It's messy, risky, and just another Tuesday for the guy running the show. And Parker, he better watch his back, because while he's off doing Parker things, someone else is out here saving the whole show, one risky pump fix at a time. Next up, that foot valve he wrestled with earlier. Turns out it's not just faulty, it's garbage. It's been letting the water slide out like a broken soda fountain. He rips it out, and the thing basically crumbles in his hands. Not exactly what you want to see when you're counting on it to hold back thousands of gallons of water. He gets a new one on standby, but even that isn't smooth. The replacement is just a hair too wide, and the bolt holes don't line up unless you muscle them. So of course he grabs the biggest wrench he can find and makes it fit. The man's not in the mood for waiting on perfect parts. If it holds, it holds. And if not, well, it's just another fire he'll put out later. As he tests the new valve, there's this moment. Just a heartbeat where nothing happens. No water flow, no pressure change. It's like the whole system is mocking him. But then that familiar hum starts back up. The pump coughs, wheezes, then clears its throat like a grumpy old man. And finally, the water gushes. Not a trickle, a flood. Strong, clean, and fast. Back at the control panel, he gives it one last check. All the numbers look good. The suction holds. The bypass stays tight. No surprise explosions. No new leaks. For now, anyway. He wipes the grime from his face, tosses his gloves in the dirt, and stretches his back like someone twice his age. The man just pulled off a miracle. Again. Mitch Blaschke didn't show up to be a hero. He came to fix stuff, plain and simple. That was his thing. Get in, get greasy, get things running. But when the pumps started groaning like they were choking on gravel and one of them gave out with a noise that rattled bones, something snapped inside him. Not fear, not panic, just this deep, gritty decision that someone had to stop pretending things were fine. The mess started with a backup pump he had installed just 3 days before. Everything was humming, steady and quiet until the ground shook like a stomp from a giant. Then came the blast. Water under pressure has a nasty attitude. It didn't just leak, it detonated. A jet of it smashed into the loader, sent Jason flying like a rag doll.
And try and get us back running here. Definitely a lot of lost time here.
No warning, no buildup, just chaos. He didn't freeze. He ran. Through mud, over cords, past barrels with peeling paint. His boots slipped once, but he didn't stop. Jason was laid out, soaked and stunned, blinking like he didn't know what planet he was on. Blood was already sliding down his face from a cut right above the eye. 1 inch lower and they'd be calling his wife, not the medic. No one else moved fast enough. That's the problem with working in the middle of nowhere. There's no cavalry. He checked Jason's breathing, pupils, the usual stuff. He was alive, which felt like a miracle considering what hit him. The clamp had broken loose from a pressure joint they had reinforced the day before. It wasn't wear and tear. It was a failure. Full load, Zero margin. After a close call, he decides things have to change, fast. Fight for a safer mine. People clustered around, unsure what to do. He turned into a wall of commands. Get the kit, shut the pump, move back. Someone tried to talk. He waved them off. This wasn't the time for opinions. Out here, it was just him and a half-stock toolbox keeping people in one piece. Parker wasn't around. The medic? That was him now. After Jason was patched up and breathing steadily again, he didn't go back to the bolts. Instead, he gathered everyone in the workshop. Their boots tracked mud across the plywood floor. No one said a word. Faces still pale, hands buried in grimy gloves, they stood together in silence. He looked at each of them. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't give a speech. He just spoke, quiet and clear. He told them it happened because they let it. That clamp had a crack. They knew it. Every one of them had seen it, nodded at it, and walked away. It wasn't about blame. He wasn't pointing fingers. He was looking in a mirror too. Everyone was guilty. Everyone had let the job creep into dangerous territory. It wasn't just one mistake, it was the little ones stacked high until something finally gave way. They were chasing gold like it was oxygen. And Parker, from some far-off satellite call, wanted results, not excuses. But now, someone almost died, and that changed the game. He scratched out a new set of rules on the whiteboard that hadn't been touched in months. First, no part goes in unless it's passed a pressure test. Second, every hose gets inspected daily. Third, toolbox talks every morning. If someone didn't like it, they could leave. He taped up a fresh copy of the water system schematic on the wall, highlighting every weak point. Walk the team through each risk. He didn't sugarcoat anything. If a hose burst, it could whip and take your arm off. If a valve stuck, it could cook a system until it cracked open. If a bolt failed and flew into someone's face, that was it.
Now, if we end up blowing the pipeline in half here, we're going to have way bigger problems than just what we already got going on.
The crew muttered at first. Change was annoying. Toolbox talks felt slow. But no one argued too hard, not with Jason lying in a trailer, face stitched up, still too dizzy to walk straight. He was assigned new roles. 2 men were tasked with nothing but inspecting and reporting. It wasn't permanent, just until the system met his new standard. He had them label every hose, clamp, fitting, and valve, draw up a checklist for each part. But this wasn't only about safety, it was about taking back control. For too long, they'd let the job dictate the terms. He was changing that. And if Parker had an opinion, he could come say it to his face. Every day the place got sharper. The welds are cleaner. The checks are more detailed. He rewrote the maintenance logs to track everything, pressure readings, flow rates, even the smell of burnt oil if someone noticed it. He didn't want close calls. He wanted boring days. And it worked. Production dropped for a few days, but breakdowns stopped. Nobody got hurt. Guys started fixing things before he even said anything. Someone installed a pressure relief valve on their own time. Another guy added warning tape to a trip hazard without being told. They weren't just fixing the site, they were fixing how they thought. Then came the stick. 3 days after the new rules, the west intake started vibrating like it had a heartbeat. He dropped what he was doing and ran, climbed down the rocky slope, checked the intake, shut it down just in time, opened the line and found a tree branch jammed in the intake. Not a twig, a full stick. Big enough to wreck the impeller. No one knew where it came from. Could have floated down from upstream. Could have been some careless drop, didn't matter. He didn't yell. He went to the shop, cut a metal screen, and retrofitted it over every intake. Even the one that barely got used. Redundancy wasn't overkill. It was the only thing standing between them and disaster. He turned the incident into a lesson. If a single stick could cause that much trouble, what would a full log do? Or ice, or a piece of metal? They didn't need fear spreading through the crew. They needed layers of caution, of protection, of responsibility. At the end of the month, Parker showed up at last. Same dusty boots, same distracted air, still glued to his phone, pretending to listen, walking the site like he still owned it. He gave a cursory nod at the mesh guards, the spotless hoses, the inspection logs now taped neatly to the wall. He pointed out that they were behind. The man in charge didn't hesitate. They were 6 days behind, yes, but no one had gotten hurt. Nothing had broken down. No fires, no chaos. Parker looked like he wanted to push back. But he didn't. He just shrugged and kept walking.
This wash plant isn't running. We're not getting anywhere near close to Parker's target.
That night, the leader lingered by the pumps. The hum was smooth, steady. The water flowed clean. The valves stayed quiet. It feels different now. Not the kind of silence that came from fear, but the kind that meant everything was finally working the way it should. The next morning, he handed out fresh safety glasses and gloves to the team. Little things, but they mattered. He replaced worn-out gear before anyone asked. Started bringing backup tools just in case. Began writing down the names of parts most likely to fail. Someone joked that he was running a school instead of a mine. He just smiled. Better that than a funeral. And Jason? He came back, stiff-legged, bandaged, but walking. The man who led didn't let him touch a tool yet. He just had him sit and watch. Let him see how things had changed. It wasn't about making an example. It was about showing what could have been avoided. By now, everyone had their role. Inspections were routine. Maintenance logs weren't ignored. The whiteboard had turned into a schedule. They color-coded it. Red for danger, yellow for check, green for go. Even Parker stopped complaining. He called once and asked about the gold count. The man answered, told him the ounces, told him they were behind, told him they hadn't buried anyone. Parker hung up without arguing. He didn't need a medal. He didn't even want a thank you. What he wanted was to never have to sprint across a job site to drag someone out of a puddle of wreckage again. And if that meant being the guy who stayed up late checking bolts in the dark, fine. If it meant arguing with Parker, fine. If it meant redoing work just to sleep better, absolutely. That's what leadership looked like out here. Not a title, not a truck with your name on it, just dirty hands and the guts to stop pretending everything's okay when it's clearly not. When the next issue came, a loose flange on the north line, he was already there. He'd flagged the pressure drop hours earlier, had the part waiting, shut down the system before it bursts, fixed it before most people even noticed. By the end of the season, they weren't the most productive site, but they were the only ones without injuries, the only one with working backup systems, the only one where people weren't cutting corners just to make numbers look good. Parker visited again in late fall. Brought a camera crew, wanted to showcase mine. He didn't smile for the cameras. He didn't clean up for the shoot. He pointed at the safety boards, the fresh welds, the clean pump room, said this is how you don't bury your team. The producer wanted to reshoot the scene with more light. He told them to film it how it was, or not at all. When the footage aired, people saw clean rigs, organized gear, a crew that didn't look like they were one mistake away from disaster. They saw a guy in a faded shirt and dusty cap giving a damn. If Mitch's way saved lives but slowed the gold, is he the hero or the problem? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.